So how do you make a big lens like this even bigger? The answer is extenders. An extender like this can effectively double the focal length of your lens. But is it worthwhile to use an accessory like this, or can you just crop in your computer later on? Well, let's find out together. Stick around. So the way extenders work, it's basically like a magnifier that goes between your lens and your camera. All kinds of different companies make them. There are some off-brands. I have two Canon extenders here. This is the 2X, this is the 1.4X. So basically what they do is the multiplier is right on this. So a 1.4X extender will change your focal length to 1.4 times. So if you're shooting at 100 millimeters, it'll change it to 140 millimeters. The 2X extender will double the focal length. So if you're shooting at 100 millimeters, you're shooting at now 200 millimeters. Like I said, this goes right between the lens and the camera. I'll show you how that works here. But basically, you can really change the reach of your lens using something like this. It goes right on the camera, goes right on the lens, and now you have a much longer lens. This works great on really long telephoto lenses. This is the Canon 300 millimeter 2.8 lens, and by putting this on, I just turned it into a 600 millimeter lens. Now, the trade-off, or one of the trade-offs, is the maximum aperture, or at least the amount of light that's let in. By putting this in between here, you're basically cutting the amount of light that's able to reach your sensor through the lens by the same factor as you're multiplying your focal length. So this is a 300 millimeter 2.8 lens. When I attach the 2X extender to this, it becomes 600 millimeters in focal length, but it cuts the amount of light also. It cuts it from 2.8 to 5.6. So I'm losing 2 full stops of light by adding this on here. Similarly, when I add the 1.4X, I'm multiplying the focal length by 1.4 times, but I'm cutting the amount of light by 1 stop that's reaching the sensor. So there's a trade-off there in that, if you need that wide open aperture, if you need that low light shooting that you would get from a 2.8 lens like this, you're losing that, or at least you're losing some of that by putting the extender on here. But a lens like this has image stabilization, so that's going to kind of counteract that effect also. So usually that's not much of a trade-off, especially if you're shooting outdoors on a sunny day. You're losing that much light. That's going to make a big difference. So now I just put this on here. I changed this to a 600 millimeter f5.6 lens with the image stabilization. It's a really great lens to start out with. But the question really is, do I lose any image quality when I put this thing on here? Is that another one of the trade-offs as far as getting the extra reach? And if I do lose image quality, how much do I lose? And what I can also do is now, these cameras have huge sensors. The megapixels on this camera, this is the 5D Mark IV, is like 30 megapixels. It might be 32. So I've noticed more and more as these cameras get better is that I can do a lot more cropping after the fact in the computer that I wasn't able to do before. I can crop a very small part of the image and, come away with a usable image that still looks good, just using a small part of it. So what I really want to find out, and I actually haven't done this experiment before, is I really want to find out if I can crop a natural image using the 300 millimeter lens without the extender to give me basically the same focal length or the same framing as I would if I put the extender on here and shot at 600 millimeters. And to compare those two in the computer and see which one gives me the best result. So I found a sign. I wanted to shoot a sign. I wanted to have something that was nice with a nice blurred background because I want to also be able to check the depth of field. I found a sign nearby. I shot it at 300 millimeters. That's kind of as close as I can get without standing in the middle of the road. I shot it at 300 millimeters, then put the extender on there, shot it at 600 millimeters, and I want to compare the two. So we'll go into the computer, we'll check it out, we'll compare the two images, we'll get the same cropping, see how everything looks as far as the bokeh, the contrast, the sharpness. We'll see which one looks better, and maybe we'll have our answer.
So here we are in Lightroom. Now, if you're a fan of Pro Golf, you'll recognize this sign. This is the site of the 2019 PGA Championship happening in a couple of weeks. I was actually going to shoot the entire video from this spot, taking pictures as I go along, but it was so noisy, so much traffic, so much construction going on right now to get ready for this golf tournament in a couple of weeks that I just took these shots and then I went to a local park and recorded the rest of the video from there. But the first thing you can see right away is the huge difference in framing and composition between these two shots. So this is the shot at 300 millimeters. Now, this is the closest that I could get without being in the road. So that was my limitation. I wanted to get this shot. I wanted to get the shot as a sign, but I couldn't get any closer to this. So with 300 millimeters, this is what I was able to do. And by putting the 2x converter on the camera, I was able to get this shot obviously much, much closer, a much tighter composition. But like we said, the question is, could I go back and crop this image to make it look like the other one? So let's crop this down to the same size and look a little bit closer. So here's how much I'm going to be cropping of this image. You can see it's a really small section right in the center in order to get this focal length to be the equivalent of using the 2x converter. So let's take a closer look. Here's my 300 millimeter lens cropped, and here is the 300 millimeter lens using the 2x converter to make it a 600 millimeter lens. Now really they look very, very similar, I gotta say. If you look at the color, the contrast, they're both very similar images. You know, the depth of field is really the same in both situations. You're not really changing the depth of field at all. So the amount that's out of focus behind the sign is the same in both scenes. But as far as retaining the sharpness of the image quality, let's dig in even deeper and see how these look. Here's the 300 millimeter lens zoomed in at 100%, and there's really no complaint there whatsoever. Very sharp, very nice look to it. And when we put the converter on, the 2x converter, obviously we're going to get a much closer shot, zoomed in at 100%. And you can see it's still really very sharp. It's just maybe a hair softer. But like I said, it's a closer zoom. And it's really not enough to make a difference. It's really very, very close. But this is giving you extra reach here, shooting at 600 millimeters. So let's crop in even further on the 300 millimeter shot to get the same cropping as the 100% using a converter and see what that one looks like. So this is 100% crop zoomed all the way into the center using the 300 millimeter lens with the 2x converter. You're not losing any image quality by zooming all the way in like this. You're not pixelating or anything. Go over to the 300 millimeter lens without the converter using the same crop, and now I'm starting to see a little bit of pixelation. You know, everything is a little bit fuzzy here. You can see around the edges, there's little pixelations going on there. So what that means is that if you need even more reach, if you're going to be shooting at 600 millimeters and cropping in even further from that, that's where the converter is going to give you the advantage of being able to zoom in even more, because there's only so far you can zoom in digitally before you start pixelating. So this image with the 300 millimeter lens zoomed all the way into this tight little spot is pixelating. Using the 600 millimeter focal length, it's not a great image, but it's usable and it's not pixelating at all. So if that's what you need, if you need more reach than what the 600 millimeters is, what the 2x converter is providing you, then that's really what you need. Cropping later on in the computer won't do in that situation. So what have I learned here? Well, I've learned that if I need the extra reach, if I need to double my focal length, then I don't necessarily need to use a 2x converter. I can make that crop in the computer and really get basically the same results. So it's not worth having to spend money on a converter, having to carry one around with me. It's actually better, or at least the same to just crop in the computer later on. But if I need more reach than that, if I need to go beyond 2 times my focal length, then the only way to get there without obviously getting a longer lens itself would be to use something like the converter, the 2x converter, and then cropping even further in the computer.
So there was some interesting results there. I'm going to put a link to the Canon extenders that I use in the description below if you want to check those out on Amazon. I hope you found this helpful. I know I did. It kind of, answers some questions that I had of whether or not I really even need to use these extenders. So I hope you found this helpful. Also, if you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel and click on the little notification bell. This way you get notified every time we post a video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.